Evening. Ernie, I was thinking again, when you gave me the answer yesterday about Kol Dechfin Yosef Yecho, the whole thing we're talking about is, of course, I know you said that it applies after the Korban Pesach, after the big dish, but still, the whole thing talks about a Korban Pesach, and we say Kol Dechfin Yosef Yecho. So
whoever subscribed to the Korban Pesach is invited to eat. If you were not subscribed, you didn't eat from that Pesach. You ate from the Pesach you were subscribed to.
So it doesn't apply to strangers, right? To strangers, and I mean,
It's our seders. It does, because we invite the poor people to our seder, right, because we don't have the Korban Pesach. But if we would have the Korban Pesach, we wouldn't have been able to just invite strangers unless you had people subscribe to it. Because it was eaten, Korban Pesach was eaten Limenuyav. Limenuyav means people who subscribe to it.
Whether they paid or not, it's got to be invited, obviously.
There was a subscription. There was a subscription. You gave a certain amount of money to participate in that Korban.
See.
By the way, that's where you learn out. I don't know. You once heard a shir about Tzvika. You learn out that there was no separate seating. You had mishpochas and you had friends together, and I can assure you that the woman and the men sat together by the Korban Pesach.
You have to get that in, Walter.
I know, but I didn't have to get that in because it's so true. Because it's so true. You find nowhere that they were sat as families together.
Walter, you don't have to go back to the time of Pesach. There are pictures from the 1950s of the dinners of the major yeshivas where men and women sat together.
Excuse me. By my in-laws' wedding, right? Rav Moshe Feinstein and the Satmarov were both there, and basically it was the men and the woman sat at separate tables, but at the main table, Rav Moshe Feinstein and the Satmarov all sat at the same table with the kala and the mishpocha.
Oh, wow.
And there was no machitza.
Okay. Yeah, but the kala was your mother-in-law.
Yeah, right. I hope so. That's why
they were sitting with her. She was somebody.
We've got a movie of it. It's okay.
She knew more than that, maybe.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Okay, that's not the issue.
Walter, you found the movie again?
The what? Mario, you took it, Mario.
No, you guys lost it that night.
No, Mario, you took that movie.
Yeah, I sold it.
Okay.
He's going to blackmail it. Mario's blackmailing you.
Yeah. Mario knows. He's seen the movie, right, Mario?
Correct.
Okay.
Who played you?
It's okay. Now we're going to have the people who are toe the line going to be able to sit together. The people who don't toe the line will be sent to decompression camps that they'll be able to be told what to do. It's okay. You won't be allowed to sit together with the people who know what's going on.
Okay. We're learning Samech Aleph 61. We're making a distinction between when you have a machshava of Shinui Kodesh, like you're shechting a Korban Pesach, but you think about it as a Chatzis or an Asham, versus Shinu Bailim, where when you shecht it, instead of thinking about this owner, you thought about the other owner. So we wanted to compare Shinu Bailim with Shinu Kodesh. So the Gemara said, "Lo, Imanu Shinu Kodesh came Psula Begufa." When you have in mind a different type of korban, it's a psul in the goof of the korban. Number one, v'yeshno ba'arba avodos. That improper machshava can be had in each one of the four different avodot. Shchita, kabbalah, hilacha, zrika. Number three, yeshno lachar misa. That if a person designated a korban and then died, his son can bring the korban of his father, and if the son shechted it shalol lishmo, then it was also it doesn't fulfill the choiva of the father's debt to bring that korban. He has to bring another one. And number 4, yeshno betzibur kiviyachid. The concept of a psul by shinui kodesh will work whether it's a private korban or a public korban. Toimer b'shinu bailim. But you cannot say those 4 things when you have a machshava improper regarding shinu bailim, thinking about different ownership. Why? Number 1, the ein psula begufo. You have a shlamim, and you're thinking when you shechted for a different person, you didn't create a psul in the goof of the korban. That's number 1. And ein of arba avodas. The shinui bailim can only take place in certain of the avodas. For example, only shchita, and not by the other avodas. We'll see why. And ein lachar misa. There isn't the same concept that a son who inherits the korban, he passes it through having shinu bailim. Number 4, eino betzibur kivyachi. You can't passel a korban sibur because a korban sibur doesn't have bailim. And afagav the tarti lavdavka, even 2 of these that we mentioned are shvach. But tarti miyadavka, but 2 of the distinctions between psul machshavas bailim versus psul machshava haguf are going to be inviolate. For example, the maishna shinu bailim, dulavi psula begufo. Just like you said, if you have in mind different bailim, it doesn't really create a psul in the goof of the korban. Why? The psulu machshava ba'amai. It's not like you broke the leg of the korban. I can understand if you made a mum in the korban, you had a psul begufo. But shinu bailim is only a psul machshava. Well, based on that, shinu kodesh not psul machshava ba'amai. When you think about a Pesach and you think that it's a shlamim, it's also just a shinu machshav. So that's number 1. So we reject one of the distinctions. V'su hado amar shinu bailim eno lachar misa. You said that shinu bailim doesn't have the same psul, where if the yoresh brings the korban and he has a machshavas bailim issue, it invalidates it. Rav Pinchas Reiner v'Amid Amar yesh no shinu bailim lachar misa. He holds that the yoresh, if he brings a korban and thinks about the wrong bailim, it also invalidates it. So it's not a distinction between the psul machshava of psul hakodesh. So ma'ik lemei. However, tarti miyas dafkinin, but 2 of the distinctions remain. That means the tzibur kivyachid remains, and yeshno barba avodas remains. So, in fact, because the Gemara rejected the comparison, Amar Rava, Pesach sheshachtu b'shayim osashon yishinu bailim. You have a korban Pesach 3 months before the Pesach, or 3 months after Pesach, that a person shechted with an improper machshava regarding the bailim. It's nasa kemi she'en lo bailim bizmano upasu. It's as if a korban Pesach was brought with no bailim at all, and you shechted it bismano, which is pasul. So this will be the same psul. And in fact, that's the halacha, like Rava. Period. Mishnah. Shachto shalola ochla. Person shechted a korban Pesach, and he did it because he had in mind people who cannot eat from the korban Pesach. We'll see what that means. or Shalolim Nuya. He had in mind people who had not subscribed to that Korban Pesach. Or he had in mind when he shechted la'arelim, uncircumcised Jews who are not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach, and latmeim, who also can't participate in the Korban Pesach, pasul. Such a Korban is pasul. But that's if you had exclusively people who were not oichla or menuya. There were no combination of people who were roy for the Korban Pesach with non-roy. However, says the Mishnah, if a person shechted lo oichla b'shaloi lo oichla, a mix of people who can eat with people who can't eat, all the menuya b'shaloi menuya. Some were subscribed, some were not subscribed. Lamulim v'la'arelim. He had in mind circumcised people and uncircumcised people. He had in mind l'tmeim v'lotohoyim. So if it's a combination, the korban is kosher. Then the Mishnah says, shachto korban chatzois pasul. You have to shecht the korban pesach after chatzois. Otherwise, it's pasul. The pasuk says, "V'shachatu osol kol kahal adat Yisrael bein ha'arbayim." Bein ha'arbayim means afternoon. Mishum shenemar bein ha'arbayim. Now, up until now, we've learned that the order of the various korbanos in the afternoon was: first you brought the korban atamid, then you shechted the korban pesach. However, shachto koyim l'tamid, if the person shechted the korban pesach before the korban atamid, b'diavad it's kosher, as long ulevad shiei achem mamaris b'damu ad shizar katamid. So here we're talking about you shechted the pesach first. So what you should do, lechatchila, someone has to stir the blood so it doesn't coagulate, until somebody goes ahead and checks the korban tamid, collects the blood of the korban tamid, and does the zrika of the korban tamid. Because if you can do the zrika, you're supposed to do the shechita and the zrika after the korban tamid. But if you shechted it before the tamid, at least try to do the zrika after the zrika of the korban tamid. However, even in that case, im nizrak, if you went ahead and you did the zrika of the dam pesach before the dam atamid, b'diavad kosher. Gemara. Tan Rabbanon Ketzad Shalol Achlav. When the Mishnah said you shechted for people who don't eat, what does that mean? So it means l'shum chola or l'shum zakeh, a sick person who can't eat, or a zakeh who doesn't have teeth to chew. Ketzad Shalol Nuya Nimnu Alav Chavurazu. This group of people subscribed, and when he shechted it, he did it l'shem chavura acheres. That's a psul. Menadim Yili. Now, where do we see this? Where do we see the raya to this? Because the pasuk says, "Im yimat habayit niyot miseh, v'lakachu ushcheno hakarov el beito b'michsat nefashot ish lefi achlo tachosu alaseh." So the Torah Rabbanon b'michsat melamed she'ena pesach nishchat el l'menuyot. When you shecht the korban pesach, you shecht it for those that subscribe to that animal. Yachol shachtu shalom nuv yeko over ala mitzvah v'kosher. So maybe you shechted it for the people who did not subscribe. Maybe, fine. You were over on the mitzvah saseh of b'michsas. But maybe the animal would still be kosher. Talmud loymar b'michsas tachosu. It's a double language. Akosuv shona alav la'ake. By basically repeating the same word, it told us that no, this mitzvah is la'ake. Doesn't work if you don't do it. Rabbi Omer Lashon Sursi, who, this is like Aramaic, Like the person told his friend, shecht me this korban. That means he has to be there at the time of the shechita. There has to be a subscription to that animal. Fine. You showed me a raya that you cannot shecht the korban pesach for non-subscribers, and if you do, it doesn't work. Where's the raya that if you shecht it for a chola or a zaken, people who can't eat, that it doesn't work? Shalom achla b'nalan amakra ish lefi achlo tachosu iskish oichlin lemenuyin. So it compared shechting for people who are capable of eating to the issue of subscription. Madoch, if you shechted for people who were not subscribed, it's possible. Therefore, we learn the same thing through a hekesh, that if you shechted it for people who can't eat it, then it's possible as well. Okay. Samech alaf amid beis. Shachta lemulin al menash yishkapru bo arelim bezrika. You shechted thinking about circumcised men. But you also have, on the condition that even Arelim will get kapara when I do the zrika. Remember, the shechting of the animal is what prepares the animal to be eaten. The zrika is a matir, but it's not really involved in preparing the animal for eating. But the zrika provides kapara. So the Gemara's hypothetical is, I had in mind when I shechted for the right people, meaning to the mulin, but I added a twist and I said, I want the arelim to be miskaper with the zrika. Rav Chisda Omar Pasul.
Ernie, since when does a korban pesach is a mechaper? Korban pesach is a separate din.
It's a kapara. Anytime you do zrika of any korban, there's kapara part of it. Even when you bring a shlom.
And I understand, but how do we know it is by the korban pesach? Where do you learn that out from? I understand all the other korbanos.
But the word yiskapru bo bezrikaso, the act of zrika is an act of kapara. It's hand in hand. Being mechaper on the mizbeach means to do the zrika. So even if we don't say yet, even though we don't say yet that there's an atonement like by korban chatas, the zrika is an act of kapara. Sometimes they'll say you're being mechaper on the mizbeach, which means you're doing the zrika. So, but Echanami, we'll see later on concepts that there is a concept of kapara, because zrika sadam is that aspect, and sometimes the achila of the korban is also part of the kapara. Either the bailim eat, we had before. Remember when the kohanim eat the basar, then the bailim get their kapara. So there's various acts, or the mizbeach burns the chaylev. The act of bringing every korban has an aspect of kapara, even the korban pesach.
Yeah, but the korban pesach is a tzibur korban that is for us for as chira more than for a kapara.
It's not kapara exactly. It's not a kapara like a chatas.
No, I'm just saying. You would think that the korban pesach, the ikar mitzvah of the korban pesach, overtakes everything. In other words, you're comparing it to other korbanos. It's not compared to other korbanos. It's really not.
The Shaila, the Steinsaltz says, B'chol korban mitzuyus lefachot shtei asiyos shonos. Every korban has at least zrika sadam, v'haktoras hachelev. You always throw dam, and you always put the chelev on the mizbeach. Uve korbanot achadim, gam achila chelek min korban. For example, in Olo we don't eat. But in other korbanos, we do eat, like a shlomim or a chatas. Ayidei Kohanim, for example, by a Chatis or a Nosha, or Habaylim, or the owners, let's say by a Shlomim, or both of them. And also, Yesh Korban Gam Stodim Shonim Mebchinas HaKesher Beino Bein Bailim. Each Korban has its own unique connection between the Korban and its owner. Yesh Tzad Echad Shechov Lavi Korban Mesuyim Shekol Odlo Hu Krav Tzarich Bala Korban Lachzer Lavi Korban. So, for example, if I owe Korban Chatas and I didn't bring the Korban Chatas, I have a chova to bring that Korban. Sometimes I'm bringing a Korban B'Nedava where I don't have a chiyuv to do it. Yesh Gam Tzad HaKapara Shebe Korban She'ena Kosher Tamid B'Yitziyah De Chova. Sometimes there'll be a fulfillment of a kapara without fulfilling that chov. V'nei kapar shebechol hakorbanos kshura tamid b'zrika sadam. Like I said, every kapara is connected to zrika sadam. Ki ein aktoras ha'imurim, by the korbanos that are eaten, ha'achilim ha'akvinas ha'kapara. So we know, once you do the zrika sadam, you have kapara, even if you didn't eat anything, even if the beit mizbech didn't eat anything. Av kili itim ein yotzim yedei chova. Sometimes you wouldn't fulfill the chov because you didn't do it properly. So we will see as well as we learn on in Masechet Pesachim why we're bringing the Korban Pesach. Like Walter tried to discuss, is it Zechira? Are we being atoning for certain things that we did? It's not really, it's a combination of a Korban Sibur and a Korban Yochid. It's not brought by the Sibur. It's brought by each individual Jew. Now, each individual Jew doesn't have to bring his own Korban. 10 Jews can subscribe to one Korban Pesach. That's what sort of makes it a little bit of a hybrid between a Korban Yochid and a Korban Sibur, since most people, since more people than one can be bailim on such a Korban. And we'll see as well that only korbanei tzibur can be offered if greater than 51% of the klal is tameh. And the Korban Pesach is an example of one of those korbanos that you can offer even though 51%. So in fact, it is a korban tzibur. But then again, there is a kapara going on because, like I said, the word zrika also can sometimes say when I'm a chaper on the mizbech, it doesn't always mean that I'm getting a physical atonement like I do with a korban chatas, for example. So again, let's go back to the issue here. Here we're dealing with a case, I'm shechting with them in mind for only circumcised men. So l'chor it should be okay. But I have in mind that non-circumcised should have kapara at the time of zrika. Rav Chizda says that such a machshava will passel the korban. That thinking about our raiment at the time that you do the zrika will passel the korban. Rabba Amar kosher. Rabba says it's kosher. It doesn't. Thinking about the arelim by zrika, we'll see why he thinks it's kosher. Rav Chizda Amar passel because yes machshavas arelim bizrika. There will be an impact. Having that machshava at the time you do the zrika will have halachic significance to passel it. Rabba Merkosher because a machshava sareli b'zrika. The zrika doesn't, like I said before, it's not an act that allows you to eat. You got to shech the korban. You don't have to do a zrika of a korban, of a regular animal. You can't eat a regular animal unless you shecht it. And we're not allowed, an orel is not allowed to eat. But zrika is not directly connected. So therefore, Rabbah says, ein machshavas harelim will be enough to passel this korban. Omer Rabbah mana aminah. And Rabbah gives us a proof to Tanya. Yachol yisol bnei chavura boy nimo. So when you have, we said in the Mishnah that if I have a combination of people who are circumcised and people who are uncircumcised, we say it's kosher. But the Brisa says I had a havamina that Yaakov Yisov Nechabura Boinimo, that maybe an Orel who comes along and joins this group will passel it for everybody, and Vidinu, and we will see it logically. Hoyel v'orla poiseles. Thinking about somebody who's an Orel will certainly passel. And thinking about somebody who's Tomei only will certainly passel. Ma tuma loy asaba mixes tuma kechol tuma. We have a din that if you have a combination of Tahorim and Tmeim, the mixas people who are Tomei will not invalidate. So af orla lo asaba mixes orla kechol orla. Having just a minority of the group being non-circumcised will not make it as if the whole group is uncircumcised. Oh, klach l'derech zu. Or maybe we should have this havamina. Hoyel v'orla poiseles. Thinking about arelim when you shut the korban pesach will passel. And uzman poisel. Thinking about eating the korban chutz lizmano, which makes it pigul, will also passel it. Now, mazman also b'mitzvah kecholzman. There, even having a part of the machshava during one of the avodot. For example, if I have a machshava chutz lizmano during any of the avodot, during shchita, during hoylacha, kabbalah, zrika, it will passel, even if I did everything else correctly. So maybe af orla also b'mitzvah kechol orla. So maybe based like on Zman, even if the minority of the group were uncircumcised, we should treat it as if the whole group was uncircumcised. So we have two studied, says the Gemara, near lemi doime. So then which case is it more similar to Zman or to Tum? Donim davar she'ena noeg b'chol hazvachim. So the din of Orelus doesn't apply to other korbanos. Other korbanos an Orel can eat from. It's only the korban Pesach. Because of the requirement that we had to be circumcised before we left Mitzrayim, there's a special din that an uncircumcised male can't eat it. That doesn't exist by a chatis or a shlomim. If a kohen, there are korbanos that an Orel can eat. So, donim davar she'ena noeg b'chol hazvachim, mi davar she'ena noeg b'chol hazvachim. It's more logical to learn it to Tumah, which is also something that is not noeg by all korbanos. Why is that? Because there are some korbanos, like korbanei tzibur, that you're allowed to bring even though people are tamei. V'al yochiach zman, rather than compare arelus to zman, shenoig b'chol hazvachim, which is a psul that is operative by every korban. Every korban, if you have a chutz l'zman or machshava, it will invalidate it. Oh, klach l'derech zu. Or maybe we should logically think the following. Maybe donin davar shaloi huter michlalo. Maybe we should compare shinui zman, which never has a heter, mi davar shalo huter michlalo. So by korban Pesach, there's never a heter for an oral to eat it. The alto kiach tuma shahuter michlalo. And we shouldn't compare it to tuma because tuma sometimes has a leniency where 51% of Klal Yisrael is tamei, you can eat it. So Talmud Loimer zois. The pasuk says zois chukas hapesach. Kol ben nechal lo yechal bo. The cholevet ish miknas kosef u'maltao so az yochal bo. The zos. Well, what is the Talmud Loimer? My zois. Well, what does that come to teach me? Ilema de kula orla pasla. Maybe the zos will teach me that if I have in mind, when I shech, only arelim, then it passes. But mitzvah saloi pasla. But if I have in mind only a minority group of arelim, that doesn't passel. But high mivichol ariel nafka. Then I already learned v'chol areh lo yochel bo. The ribui kol teaches me that it's forbidden for everybody to be areli. Ela lav hachivtani. Perhaps this is what the brisa means. Not zois, Talmud loyma v'chol areh. In a chanami. Kula orla pasla mitzasa loy pasla. That's the limud. That extra call to tell me that it's only when 100% of the group is uncircumcised, and I have the machshava for that group, does it possible? But if it's only 10% of the group that it's arelim, then it doesn't possible. And the chitema hu adin lezrika. So maybe we'll say it's going to be the same concept. By zrika. Now what? The kula orla mia pasla. That if only I have in mind during the zrika a group of 100% already, but maybe partially it will not. Talmud lomer zois. It's actually a chumrah. B'shchita hu de kula orla mia pasla. It's only by shchita that you have to have 100% to pasla, but if it's 90%, it's kosher. Aval zrika, afilu kula orla nami loy pasla. Oh, this part is the first part is the lenient aspect. Because remember, we asked the question, what if the person has in mind she's kapu bar reilim bizrika? So this is it. Aval zrika afilu kula orla nami loy pasla, that perhaps having in mind during the zrika, even only people who are reilim, it will not pass, which is a kula. Now, b'chitenu my kula de zrika. Now, why should zrika be more lenient than shchita? Why? The ein machsheves oichlin bezrika, because in general, various machshavos that relate to achila don't passel in zrika. It's only learned if you have machshavos by achila at the time of shchita, but not in zrika. But Rav Chisda will tell you, Adi Rabba, Lidich Gisa, he will go to the other extreme, not to learn it as a leniency, but to learn it as a stringency of zrika. Talmud Loimar, that v'chol arel teaches me, kula arla pasla, during shchita, if I have in mind on 100% arelim, that it will pasla. But if I have in mind only 10% arelim, mitzvah loy pasla. But zrika, afilu mitzvah nami pasla. That if I have in mind for during zrika any arelis, even 10% will also pasla. Now why? The chitem who adin zrika. Maybe it should be just like shchita. The ad ikakula or loy pasla, that if I have in mind during zrika, it's got to be 100%. Talmud lemer zois. It's only shchita who the mitzvah loy pasla. It's only the kula is by shchita that if I have a minority, it doesn't pasla. Well, zrika feel mitzvah pasla. So basically, we could go either way. Remember, Rav Chisda said it does pasla, and Rabbah says it's kosher, and they both have logic and psukim behind them. So the chitemu my chomer de zrika. Why should zrika be more chomer than shchita? Oh, there's a reason why. Because when you create pigul only gets its final stempel of pigul by zrika. Now let's understand why that is. So machshavas pigul is by any korban. If I have in mind during one of the four primary avodot, that I'm going to eat of the korban chutz lizmano. Like normally we eat of the korban within 24 hours. So if I have in mind to eat of the korban tomorrow, that's chutz lizmano. Now, if I have a machshavas pigul during shchita, and I do kabbalah, hoilacha, and zrika perfectly, so then the animal becomes pigul. But if I have a machshavas pigul during the shchita, and then let's say during zrika, I have a chutz lebaile, I have a different bailim in mind, or I have chutz komo in mind, or I have a different type of korban. It's not a chatas, it's an asham. It's not koveya pigul. Pigul has to be done. One of the avodot has to be done chutz lizmano. The rest of them have to be done perfectly. Now, gentlemen, what is usually the last avoda? Zrika. So Zrika is what is really Koivea Pigul. So that's the reason why why there's a reason Misvora to be more Machmir by Zrika. So on that, Maski Lorovashi. What do you see in the words of Chol Orel that it implies that if I have in mind 100% during Shechita, it's possible, but if it's 99%, it's kosher, maybe Dilma Haiva Chol Orel Mashma Koltuhu Orla. I would not have a meaning to say even one, only like a small amount, because of Zos, the Ika Kula Orla Loy Pasla. Unless I have 100%, it doesn't pass. And Lo Shna B'Shchita v'Lo Shna B'Zrika. This includes Zrika. So now we're back that maybe Zrika is not more Chomer. And maybe having in mind partially or even fully during Zrika will not invalidate the korban. We're back to our question, what's the halacha like? Is it like Rav Chizda or like Rabbah? So Elo Amar Rav Ashi, Rav Chizda v'Rabbah b'hai krag kamifagi. It's not a debate in svara, in logic, but it's a debate in psukim. Tomorrow we will learn the psukim, and we will learn the final halacha. But this is a very juicy piece of Kochim Gemara. It's got everything in there. It's got pigul, it's got machshavas psulos, machshavas from. It's really it's very important that this group Daf Yomi has been through a lot of Kochim because it's allowed us to perhaps learn this blot and the previous blotting, with a little bit more understanding than we did before, because we have a little bit more grounding in Kochim.
Can the Ernie, can the